Once upon a time, in a quiet valley where the hills rolled like soft waves, lived a little girl named Kira. She had bright eyes that sparkled with curiosity and a heart that loved to wander. Every day, after her chores and her books, Kira would put on her worn-out boots and step into the meadow that stretched beyond her backyard. The meadow was a place of gentle whispers, where the grass swayed in a slow, sleepy rhythm, and the wildflowers hummed lullabies to the breeze. One sunny afternoon, Kira noticed a path she had never seen before. It was a narrow trail, lined with stones that glowed faintly in the dappled sunlight. She felt a soft tug in her chest, like a gentle invitation. With a smile, she followed the path, her boots crunching softly on the earth. The air grew cooler, and a sweet scent of pine and earth filled her nose. As Kira walked, the trees grew taller and closer together, their branches forming a green tunnel overhead. The light filtered through the leaves, painting the ground with patches of amber and emerald. Kira felt the world slow down, as if the forest itself was holding its breath in anticipation of her arrival. Soon, the path opened up to a clearing. In the center stood a grand old oak tree, its trunk wide as a small house, and its branches reaching out like welcoming arms. The oak was ancient, its bark rough and full of stories, and its leaves rustled softly in a gentle wind. Kira approached the tree with awe, her heart beating like a calm drum. She knelt beside the oak and pressed her palm against the bark. The texture was warm, almost like a hug from a friendly giant. The tree seemed to breathe with her, its breath a subtle shiver that made Kira smile. She whispered, "Hello, old friend," and the oak responded with a rustle that sounded like a quiet laugh. Kira sat on a nearby rock, feeling the cool shade of the oak's leaves above her. She closed her eyes and listened to the forest's soft symphony, the distant call of a nightingale, the rustle of leaves, the faint chatter of small creatures. The oak's presence felt like a gentle blanket, comforting and safe. In that moment, Kira realized that she had found something special. The old oak tree welcomed her with open branches, offering a place where her imagination could rest and grow. She felt a warm, gentle welcome, as if the oak was saying, "Come, rest here and let your dreams wander." With a content sigh, Kira opened her eyes and looked up at the tree's towering limbs. She knew that this was just the beginning of many adventures, and she felt a deep, soothing sense of wonder. The old oak tree stood tall and patient, ready to share its stories and its quiet magic with the young explorer who had found it. And so, under the gentle canopy of the oak, Kira's heart found peace, and the valley hummed a lullaby, promising more adventures and quiet moments to come. Kira and Nia stepped into the quiet forest, the air cool and sweet with the scent of pine and fresh earth. The old oak tree stood tall and proud, its branches reaching up like gentle arms. The sunlight filtered through the leaves, painting the forest floor with soft, dappled light. They walked slowly, each step gentle on the mossy ground. Kira's small hand held a bright red scarf, and Nia's hand carried a small, woven basket. They were ready to gather twigs and leaves for a cozy craft they had imagined in their dreams. "Look at that twig," Kira whispered, pointing to a thin branch that had fallen from the oak. It was the perfect size for their little project. Nia nodded, her eyes shining with excitement. Together, they picked up the twig, feeling its smooth bark and the faint, cool breeze that brushed against their faces. They moved from branch to branch, looking for twigs that were soft and straight. Some twigs were a little thicker, but Kira and Nia liked the ones that were light and easy to bend. They carefully selected each twig, placing them gently into the basket. The basket filled with a collection of natural treasures, each one a promise of something beautiful they would create. As they walked, the sound of birdsong filled the air. A robin perched on a nearby branch and sang a tiny, sweet melody. The rustle of leaves in the breeze sounded like a lullaby. Kira and Nia listened to the quiet music of the forest, feeling calm and happy. Soon, they found a patch of bright green leaves. They were the leaves of the oak tree, but also some leaves from other trees. The leaves were soft, their edges a little curled. Nia carefully plucked a leaf, feeling its coolness against her fingertips. Kira did the same, and together they added the leaves to their basket. The basket was now filled with twigs and leaves, each one a piece of the forest's story. Kira and Nia sat on a smooth stone, looking at the treasures they had collected. The old oak tree watched over them, its branches swaying gently in the breeze. "These twigs will be the frame," Kira said softly. "And these leaves will be the decoration." Nia smiled, feeling the warmth of the sun on her face and the gentle hum of the forest around them. They imagined the craft they would make. A small, cozy nest of twigs, wrapped with leaves, would become a tiny house for a sparrow, or perhaps a little boat that would float on the river, its sails made of leaves. Whatever they chose, the craft would bring a piece of the forest into their home, a reminder of the calm and the quiet joy of gathering. They set the basket down and closed their eyes for a moment, breathing in the fresh, earthy scent. The forest seemed to sigh in a gentle, comforting way. Kira and Nia felt the forest's peace, and it filled their hearts with warmth. When they opened their eyes, the old oak tree's branches seemed to smile at them. The forest was a quiet friend, and Kira and Nia knew that the next step of their adventure would bring more wonder. They packed their basket, ready to return home and begin their craft. The twigs and leaves were still warm from the sun, and their gentle rustle seemed to whisper, "Soon, we will create something beautiful together." With a gentle wave to the old oak tree, they began the slow, steady walk back, carrying the forest's gifts and the promise of a cozy, creative adventure. Kira walked slowly through the meadow, the grass brushing her toes like a soft whisper. The sky above was a gentle blue, and a few fluffy clouds drifted lazily across it. She felt the cool breeze on her cheeks and the warm sun on her hair. It was a perfect day for a quiet adventure. She had already seen the big, old oak tree that stood at the edge of the meadow. Its branches stretched out like a giant hand, and its leaves rustled softly in the wind. Kira loved the oak tree, but today she wanted to do something different. She wanted to build a small shelter, a cozy little house for the animals and for herself. Kira knelt down beside a patch of fallen leaves and started to gather twigs. She picked up thin sticks from the ground, ones that were light and easy to bend. She also found some thicker branches that could be used for the walls. She carefully arranged the twigs in her hands, feeling the smoothness of the bark and the slight roughness of the tips. Each twig was a tiny piece of nature, and she treated them with respect. She began to lay the twigs on the ground in a square shape. The first line of twigs was the front wall. She held each twig in place with her fingers, making sure they were snug against each other. She paused sometimes, looking at the twigs and feeling a gentle calm. The forest around her seemed to hum a quiet lullaby, and the sound of her own breath matched the rhythm of her building. Next, Kira added the back wall. She placed the twigs in a straight line, making sure they were level. She took a deep breath and whispered, "One by one, I will build." She felt the patience growing inside her like a soft flower. When she felt a twig slipped, she gently adjusted it and then continued. The slow, steady pace made her feel relaxed. She then worked on the two side walls. She placed the twigs at a slight angle so that the shelter would be sturdy. Each twig was held carefully with her fingers, and she took her time. If a twig did not fit right, she would pause, look at it, and then try again. Kira learned that patience was like a gentle wind. It would help her find the right place for each piece. When the walls were finished, Kira found a flat stone to place at the center of the shelter. She laid the stone gently, and the twigs settled around it like a warm blanket. The stone was cool to the touch, and Kira felt a small thrill of excitement. She had built her own little house, and it was beautiful in its simplicity. She stepped back and looked at her creation. The shelter was small, but it was strong. It was made of twigs and a stone, and it felt like a tiny home in the forest. Kira smiled, feeling a quiet pride. She felt the calm that came from patience and from working with nature. Kira sat inside her shelter and listened to the gentle sounds around her. The wind made a soft rustle in the leaves, and a distant bird sang a slow song. The shelter felt like a hug from the forest. Kira closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of the sun and the coolness of the shade. She was ready for a peaceful rest, knowing that she had built something special with her own hands, and that the forest would keep her safe and calm. Nia sat on the small stool by the window, the light from the sky falling softly on her little table. She had a set of crayons and a piece of paper that was a little bigger than her palm. The old oak tree stood tall outside, its branches reaching like gentle hands toward the blue sky. Nia wanted to paint a quiet picture of the oak, a picture that would feel like a lullaby. She opened the crayons. The colors were bright and friendly. "I will use green for the leaves," she whispered. She pulled out the green crayon and held it in her hand. The green was like fresh grass, like the green that grows on the ground when the rain falls. She pressed the crayon gently onto the paper and drew a line. She made the line thin, so the leaves would look small and soft. She felt the crayon glide over the paper, and the line looked like a tiny leaf. Next, Nia chose a brown crayon. "The bark is brown," she said. The brown was warm, like honey or the color of a wooden table. She pressed the crayon onto the paper and drew a line along the bottom of the oak. The line was a little wavy, like the bark of the tree. She made the line thick enough that it would hold the shape of the tree. Nia looked up at the sky. The sky was a soft blue, like a gentle blanket. She took a blue crayon and drew a small circle at the top of the paper. The circle was not too big, just enough to show that the oak grew in a big blue sky. She pressed the crayon lightly, so the blue would not be too loud. It would be a quiet blue, like a quiet night. She then thought about the leaves again. She wanted to add a little yellow to the green. The yellow was like sunshine. She took a yellow crayon and pressed it on the paper next to the green. She mixed the two colors together and a new color appeared. It was a light green, like a leaf that is still young. She drew a few more leaves, each one a little different. The leaves were not all the same shape, but they were all gentle. Nia took a breath. She felt the calmness in her chest. The painting was quiet, just like the old oak tree. She could feel the wind outside, but it was very gentle. She could hear the birds singing softly, but she did not need to listen. She was in her own quiet world with her crayons and her paper. When she finished, she looked at the picture. The oak was small, but it was strong. The leaves were green, the bark was brown, and the sky was blue. The picture was simple, but it felt full of life. Nia smiled. She knew that the old oak tree was a quiet friend, and she had made a quiet picture of it. She put the crayons back in their little box. She cleaned her fingers with a damp cloth, and she wiped the table. The light from the window was still soft. Nia felt a little sleepy. She could imagine the old oak tree standing tall, its branches swaying gently. She closed her eyes and thought of the colors green, brown, blue, and a little yellow. The colors were like a soft lullaby, and Nia was ready to rest. The sun had slipped behind the hills, painting the sky in soft pinks and golds. Kira and Nia sat on the cool, mossy bark of the old oak, their little feet tucked under their knees. The oak's branches stretched wide, like a gentle giant's arms, and its leaves whispered as the wind brushed them. They closed their eyes, breathing in the sweet smell of earth and pine. The wind, shy and slow, came in waves. It tickled Kira's cheek and brushed Nia's hair. "It's like a lullaby," Kira whispered, her voice as soft as a feather. Nia nodded, her eyes still closed. She could hear the wind's song in 3 parts. First, a soft sigh that moved through the leaves, almost like a sigh from a sleepy cloud. Then, a gentle rustle that sounded like tiny paws walking on a leafy carpet. Finally, a distant hush that made the whole forest feel like it was breathing together. "Do you hear the first part?" Kira asked. "It sounds like a tiny heart beating, slow and steady." Nia opened her eyes a little and smiled. "It's like the forest is humming a lullaby for us." They stayed quiet, letting the wind carry their thoughts. The wind seemed to know every secret of the oak. It whispered about the roots that dug deep into the earth, about the leaves that danced with the sun, about the birds that sang from the branches. Kira imagined the wind as a gentle friend, coming to tell stories that only the forest could share. Nia felt the wind's touch on her face, cool and comforting. It felt like a soft blanket that wrapped around her shoulders. She imagined the wind as a quiet hug from a wise old owl, keeping her safe as the day turned to night. Kira's fingers traced the smooth bark of the oak. "I feel the wind in my fingers, too," she said. "It's like the tree is breathing with us." Nia's fingers followed Kira's, and together they felt the rhythm of the earth. The wind, in its slow, patient way, carried the scent of pine sap and fresh rain. It smelled like the promise of a new day. Kira and Nia inhaled deeply, letting the scent fill their lungs. The wind seemed to carry a quiet promise that tomorrow would bring more adventures, more stories, more wonder. The old oak stood tall and proud, its leaves shimmering in the fading light. Kira and Nia sat beneath its shade, listening to the wind's gentle lull. They felt calm, as if the wind was a blanket made of soft, cool breezes. After a while, the wind slowed even more, almost as if it were breathing slowly itself. Kira and Nia could hear the tiniest sounds: the creak of a twig, the distant call of a nightingale, the rustle of a small mouse in the grass. Each sound was a note in the wind's soft song. The wind's song was a reminder that even the quietest things have a voice. Kira and Nia felt grateful for the gentle wind and the old oak that shared its story with them. They felt a deep sense of peace, as if the wind and the oak were telling them that everything was okay, that the world was full of calm and wonder. When the wind finally whispered a final sigh, Kira and Nia opened their eyes. The sky had turned a deep blue, and a few stars began to peek out. They felt ready to rest, their hearts full of the wind's gentle song. The old oak stood tall, a silent guardian, and the wind, like a lullaby, promised that tomorrow would bring new adventures and new wonders. The two friends smiled at each other, their minds calm and their spirits light, ready for the next chapter of their journey. Soft light filtered through the leaves, turning the forest floor into a patchwork of gold and green. Kira walked slowly, her small feet leaving gentle footprints on the damp earth. The wind whispered through the branches, and the distant song of a robin seemed to carry her name. She had been exploring the woods for a while, looking for the old oak tree that stood tall and proud at the edge of the meadow. But today, her curiosity tugged her deeper into the trees. A rustle in the bushes caught her attention. Kira paused, listening. The sound was soft, almost like a secret. She stepped closer, her eyes scanning the shadows. There, just beyond a curtain of ferns, a narrow path lay hidden. It was not wide, the stones were small and covered in moss. The path curved gently, as if inviting her to follow its slow, winding trail. With a small smile, Kira stepped onto the path. The moss under her shoes felt cool and squishy, and the stones were warm from the sun. She could hear the faint trickle of water ahead, and the path seemed to hum with a quiet promise. Each step felt like a gentle drumbeat, a rhythm that matched the beat of her heart. As she walked, a small bird hopped onto a nearby twig. It blinked at her with bright, curious eyes. Kira leaned in, and the bird sang a soft, lilting tune that floated through the air. The melody was simple, a soothing lullaby that seemed to echo the gentle pulse of the forest. She felt a wave of calm wash over her, and her shoulders relaxed. The path twisted through a thicket of wildflowers. Their petals were pale pink and blue, swaying in the breeze. The air smelled sweet, like honey and fresh rain. Kira pressed her hand against a smooth stone, feeling its coolness against her palm. She let her mind drift, letting the forest breathe with her. The path led her to a small clearing, where a crystal-clear stream meandered through the rocks. Kira sat on a flat stone beside the stream, watching the water glide over pebbles. The sound was a gentle, rhythmic whisper that seemed to sing her a lullaby. She felt the coolness of the water on her toes, and the sun warmed her face. She closed her eyes for a moment, listening to the water and the soft rustling of leaves. It felt like the forest was telling her a secret, a story of peace and wonder. She looked up at the trees that lined the path. Their trunks were thick and strong, and their branches stretched out like arms, creating a canopy of green above her head. The shadows danced softly on the ground, and the light made everything feel warm and safe. Kira felt grateful for this quiet moment, for the gentle path that had led her here. When she opened her eyes, she noticed the old oak tree in the distance, its trunk wide and inviting. Its leaves rustled softly, as if waving a farewell. Kira felt a gentle tug in her heart, a call to explore more, but also a gentle reminder to respect the forest. She stood up, brushed off her knees, and smiled at the old oak. The oak seemed to nod, as if saying, "Take your time, little explorer." The forest is full of wonder. Kira followed the path a little farther, stepping over a fallen log that was covered in moss. The path wound deeper into the woods, and the forest seemed to open up around her. The air was cool, and the scent of pine filled her nose. She felt light and free, her heart beating with gentle excitement. The path was still narrow, but it felt wide enough for her imagination to roam. She knew that the hidden path would take her to many more quiet places, where she could find new wonders in simple things. With a calm breath, she stepped forward, ready for the next gentle adventure. Kira and Nia lay back on the soft grass beneath the old oak tree, their small hands resting together. The leaves above whispered in a gentle wind, a lullaby that had been singing for many years. The oak's bark was warm and rough, like a friendly blanket that had protected many travelers before them. The sky was a deep blue that was slowly turning into a velvety night. Tiny stars began to twinkle, one by one, as if the whole sky were putting on a quiet show just for the two friends. The moon rose higher, casting a silver glow that painted the leaves in a silver-blue light. It made the oak look like a giant guardian standing tall and calm. Kira felt the cool grass tickle her toes. She closed her eyes and breathed in the fresh night air. Each breath was a soft sigh that made her feel lighter. Nia listened to the gentle creak of the oak as it settled into the night. The sound was steady and kind, like a heartbeat that matched the rhythm of their breathing. The wind carried the scent of pine and damp earth. It smelled like a sweet, soft hug Kira, and Nia felt safe and warm, wrapped in the oak's big, old arms. Their hearts beat slowly, like a soft drum, in harmony with the world around them. The stars above seemed to be watching over them, keeping them safe. They talked softly about the day's adventures, about the new things they had seen, and the wonders they had found. Their voices were quiet, like a whisper that only the night could hear. The oak listened, its branches rustling like a gentle applause. The night was peaceful, and the world seemed to pause just for them. Kira felt a gentle pull in her chest, a feeling that was like a lullaby. She thought of the bright colors she had seen in the forest, of the bright sun that had warmed her face, and of the warm laughter of her friends. The oak's leaves were like a blanket, keeping her cozy and safe. Nia felt the same warmth. She thought of the big, friendly sky, the soft wind, and the twinkling stars. The oak was a friend that kept her safe, and she felt very grateful. The wind grew softer, and the oak's branches swayed like a lullaby. Kira's eyelids grew heavy, and she felt her body relax. Nia's breathing slowed, and she felt her heart beat calm and steady. The night was a gentle friend that carried them towards sleep. They lay still, feeling the oak's presence. The old oak tree was like a big, wise friend that watched over them, and they knew they were safe. The night sky was a soft blanket of stars that gently covered them. The wind was a gentle kiss that made them feel calm. Kira's breathing became slow and even. Nia's breathing matched Kira's, each breath a soft, slow wave. The oak's leaves whispered in a calm rhythm, like a soft song that sang them to sleep. The night was a gentle, quiet friend that wrapped them in a soft, warm hug. They drifted, hand in hand, into a gentle sleep. Their dreams were filled with the oak's bright leaves, the soft wind, and the twinkling stars. The oak tree stood tall and strong, a guardian that kept them safe. The night was a peaceful, soft blanket that covered them, and the wind was a gentle lullaby that sang them into a deep, sweet sleep.